Today I want to share with you the top 10 best gardening books for creating your kitchen garden. Hi sweet friends, I'm Mary and welcome to Mary's Nest, where I teach traditional cooking skills for making nutrient-dense foods like bone broth, ferment, sourdough, and more. So if you enjoy learning about those things, consider subscribing to my channel. And don't forget to click on the little notification bell below. That'll let you know every time I upload a new video. Now, the books that I'm going to share with you today are popular gardening books about creating a kitchen garden. So if this is something that you've been thinking about doing for a while, I think you're going to find this list very interesting. And if you already have a kitchen garden, you may have some of these books, but I also think you're going to find a few surprises on my list. Now, as I shared, these are popular books and many of them have been around for years. So be sure to check your library and take these out, look through them, and see what you like for eventually adding to your own personal home garden library. And when you are ready to expand or create your garden library, be sure to check used bookstores because, as I said, these books have been around for a while and I think you're going to find a lot of them at used bookstores. And if you're like me and you like half-price books, definitely check there because they have a big garden, or at least most of the ones I've been to have a large gardening section. And I'll be sure to put all the information in the description below under this video for each of the books that I'm going to talk about today. Well, I think the first thing that we need to get started with is to define what is a kitchen garden. Some of you may know it as a potager, or as the French say, a potager. And usually what a kitchen garden is, as the name implies, a garden that's right outside your kitchen. And generally in that garden, you would grow fruits and vegetables, some herbs, and also some flowers. And as to the flowers, you could grow both edible flowers as well as some decorative flowers that just are nice to adorn your kitchen table with. But whatever you grow, the bulk of what you grow is going to be edible and things that you can bring into your kitchen to make meals out of. Now don't worry, you can have a kitchen garden wherever you live. If you have a backyard, you can certainly have your kitchen garden, but if all you have is a patio or even a balcony in the city, and even maybe just a sunny kitchen windowsill, you can have a kitchen garden, because there's a lot of things that not only grow in the ground, but can also be grown in pots. And these are all the sorts of wonderful things that you're going to learn in gardening books about creating a kitchen garden. Okay, let's get started with the first round of books. Now, this is the first book that I want to talk about, and they're actually two books because they're by the same author, who I just think the world of. The author of this book is Sylvia Thompson, and the name of this book is The Kitchen Garden. And the second book is by her also, is The Kitchen Garden Cookbook. And these both came out, I believe, around 1995, so they've been around a while, they're tried and true, and you can easily find these at many bookstores, especially used bookstores. Now, the nice thing about The Kitchen Garden, this is wonderful if you're really new to creating a kitchen garden and you want to get some ideas for what you might want to think about planting. In addition to walking you through all the possible vegetable, herbs, and flowers that you can plant in your garden, Sylvia also reviews the North American Hardiness Zone Map. And so now, if you live in North America, we've had our country, or our continent basically, divided into hardiness zones. And what that means is, what can you grow in your area that can withstand the coldest possible temperature that it may get in your area? And that's a very important thing to learn when you're new to gardening. Now, if you don't live in the United States or in North America, don't worry. What you can do is contact your local agricultural agency in whatever town you may live in, whatever country, and you can ask them what is the coldest temperature that has been recorded for our area. And then that will help you when you start to look at seeds or plants that you're thinking about putting in your kitchen garden, because that will let you know if that plant or seed is appropriate. But what's really wonderful about this, the bulk of this book, it literally starts at A and works its way, all through the various as I said, fruits, vegetables, flowering plants and whatnot that you can consider for your kitchen garden. And she just has so much detail, so many plants that I've never even planted in my garden. I mean, she just covers everything. Like in melons, she goes through all the different types of melons. And like, for example, golden crispy hybrid. That's a melon I wasn't even familiar with, let alone tried to grow. So it's nice that you can start to look through this and learn all of the possible different varieties of things you may have available to you to grow. And the edible flowers section was something that really fascinated me when I started growing edible flowers years ago. And I love now to grow nasturtiums because not only are they pretty, but they're edible. And then in Sylvia's book, The Kitchen Garden Cookbook, as the name implies, cookbook, she goes through recipes using all of these possible things that you could be growing in your kitchen garden. And it's just wonderful. And some of them are very simple recipes, so they are very accessible to even the new kitchen garden cook. For example, she has this one, I love tarragon. I can't really grow it here in Central Texas, so what I grow is something we call Texas tarragon, which is something, you may also know it as Mexican marigold. It's in the marigold family, but the leaves taste just like tarragon. And Sylvia has a wonderful recipe in here, chicken with tarragon cream. It's very easy to make, not a lot of ingredients. That's another thing I like about her recipes, not a lot of ingredients. She really tries to help you highlight the freshness and the wonderful tastes of what you're growing in your garden. So I'll just modify this chicken with Texas tarragon. And so there's just a lot of wonderful ways for you to bring those things from your garden and have a cookbook that really makes the best use of what you're growing and how to really maximize highlighting the flavor of your fresh grown produce. Now, the next book I want to share with you is The Moosewood Restaurant Kitchen Garden. Now, if you're familiar with Molly Katzen, who's the author of all the Moosewood cookbooks, you're going to love this book as well. This is actually written by David Hirsch, who I gather was in charge of the Moosewood Restaurant Kitchen Garden. So when I saw this, I was just so thrilled to find it. And this has been out since 1992. I've had this book for years. I started collecting Molly Katzen's cookbooks, the Moosewood cookbook, and then the follow-up to that, the Enchanted Broccoli Forest cookbook. How could you not love having a cookbook named the Enchanted Broccoli Forest? But Molly has wonderful recipes. Many of them are very vegetarian, but that just lends itself so well to things that you're going to be cooking that you're bringing in from your kitchen garden. So I've always loved her cookbooks. Now this book is part gardening book and part cookbook. So if you weren't able to find Sylvia's books, or you had to really limit the number of books that you wanted to add to your gardening library, this is a good alternative. Because in this book, David reviews all the various options you may have for planting in your garden, in your kitchen garden. And he goes over vegetables and herbs and also edible flowers, which I think, just really were starting to gain a lot of popularity in maybe the late 80s, early 90s. It started becoming really fashionable with chefs. So you're going to find a lot of kitchen garden books are going to address edible flowers, which is nice. So he covers a lot of that in the beginning of the book, and he talks about growing each of these plants that you may decide on, whether they're vegetables or herbs, or as I said, edible flowers. And then in the second half, well, also too, what is nice, he also shows some potential designs for kitchen gardens. Now, that's if you have the space. Don't worry, you don't have to have the perfectly designed potager, although that's a dream. It's a dream of mine someday if I have a large enough area to create something like that. But it is kind of fun to see the little hand drawings of these various ideas for creating your potager. But he also gives a lot of alternatives, like ones that this reminds me more of mine, where I kind of just have a little meandering walkway to my back gate, and then I have things planted on either side of that sort of meandering walkway. So there are a lot of options, a lot of different things you can do. He even has ideas for just planting a front yard garden. That's a wonderful idea. It's not something I can do here because we have deer like crazy, and so they would have a feast. I have things for them out there that they eat and they enjoy, and they're often eaten right down to the quick, which I know means that if I tried to plant my whole put my whole garden in the front yard, there would be nothing to harvest. But it is wonderful in his book how he does give a lot of options where you can sort of squeeze in a kitchen garden regardless of your circumstances. And he even has some ideas that if you live on a hill, you know, if it's a steep hill, how to tier things and all. So a lot of great ideas. Now, the second half of the book, he's got some wonderful recipes and things that, again, like with Sylvia's books, The Kitchen Garden and The Kitchen Garden Cookbook, they're really making the most of what you're bringing in from your garden. They're really highlighting those flavors. Like something that, you know, speaking about tarragon, he's got a tarragon vinaigrette, he's got a basil and shallot vinaigrette. Shallots are very easy to grow. And he has a dill and red onion, like shallots, red onions, any kind of onions are pretty easy to grow. And if you're doing fruits, if you have some brambles like a raspberry bush or blackberries, he's got a great recipe for raspberry vinaigrette. So those are just some of the salad dressings. But he's got herb butters and main dishes, all kinds of things. So this is a good option if you kind of want just a one-stop shop of knowing what you want to plant in your kitchen garden, how to plant it, how to design your garden, and no matter what your circumstances, and then how to use what you're harvesting from your garden. This is a great book, and I highly recommend it. Now, the next book that I want to share with you, it's actually a set of books, again, all by the same author. And the author is Rosalind, and I hope I pronounce her last name correctly, Creasy, C-R-E, or Creasy, C-R-E-A-S-Y. You cannot go wrong with any book from Rosalind. And this is a terrific book if you want to focus on herbs. And it's called The Kitchen Herb Garden, Growing and Preparing Essential Herbs. So if you find, you know, you may have like graduated from Sylvia's books and from the Moosewood Kitchen Garden book, and you really want to start to delve deep into the subject of the specifics in your kitchen garden, and you want to focus on herbs, this is a wonderful book. Now, this particular copy was published in 2019, but I believe there have been many, many editions of this book. So definitely keep your eyes open. When you're searching for it, the cover may look different. I'm not 100% sure, but I definitely think that this is really worth adding to your library, your home library, if you're specifically interested in having an extensive, or having part of your kitchen garden have an extensive area, so to speak, of herbs. Because what Rosalind does in this book, she talks about, first of all, how to plant the herbs, how to get started with your herb garden, how to design that part of your kitchen garden, the part where you're going to be putting your herbs. Or if you decide you just want your kitchen garden to be herbs, that's really how I got started many years ago. Other than maybe growing tomatoes, I was just growing herbs. It was really just a very easy way for me to get started. And then my son, who would help me in the garden, as he got a little older, we started adding some vegetables that were fun for kids to grow. And I'm going to talk about having a children's kitchen garden in a minute. And we started growing cute little things like patty pan squash, which looks like a flying saucer, and cornichons, which are little like gherkin cucumbers and things like that. But if you decide when you're first getting started, you just want your kitchen garden to be an herb garden, this is a great resource. And this is basically an encyclopedia, and she even calls it that, an encyclopedia of kitchen herbs. And she starts with Angelica and she goes all the ways to thyme. And then she also has recipes. After she goes through all the herbs that she considers to be kitchen herbs, which are obviously perfect for the kitchen garden, you can over time. Now, some of these, do also serve as medicinal herbs. She's got chamomile in here, and fennel and lavender and lemon verbena, mint, oregano, rosemary. All of these are medicinal herbs as well, as are most herbs, really. But these are the ones she considers to be good kitchen herbs for a kitchen garden and to be obviously used for culinary purposes. And then she has a lot of different recipes for what she calls her herb blends. And she'll dry the herbs and make, she'll have some fresh herb blends as well as dry herb blends. And she shows you how to do all of that. Then she'll cover making pestos, herb vinegars, herb oils, herb teas, herb butter, herb cream. I mean, she just covers the whole gamut. And then, I don't drink, but if you drink, she even shows you how to make herb vodka. Now, if you find you like Rosalind, which I think it's very easy to do, she has so many gardening books. And over the years, I have collected some of the books that she has in a series. Now, there are a lot of them. I don't have all of them. Let me put these in order. But I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, and 9. But the other, I'm always on the hunt, whenever we're at a used bookstore or at a thrift shop or whatever the case may be. I'm always on the hunt for her books. Now, the first one in the series is called The Edible Herb Garden, and it's basically the same as this smaller version, The Kitchen Herb Garden. But when I started collecting this series, I was happy to find the first one in the series, even though it was pretty much basically the same as this. But the nice thing, and especially for any of you out there as you get older, it's everything's larger because the book is larger. But that's a wonderful book, as I said, very similar to this one. Then the next one I have in the series is The Edible Salad Garden, wonderful for the kitchen garden. The Edible French Garden, this basically has a lot of vegetables that would be grown in France, used in French recipes, things like that. And then, of course, I'm going to have, given my heritage, the Italian garden. And this has some wonderful information on growing lots of Italian-type tomatoes and artichokes and fava beans, things that are very common to Italian recipes. And heirloom tomatoes, Roma tomatoes, and different things like that, along with some wonderful recipes. She's got, marinating mozzarella balls with herbs that you've grown in your garden, chopping up some of the tomatoes and herbs you may grow, and making a bruschetta, or some people say bruschetta. Either pronunciation is fine. And so this is just delightful. And these type of books in the series really delve deeply into certain types of vegetables, and it really helps expand your knowledge about what you may want to start incorporating into your kitchen garden, because that's the wonderful thing too about gardening, and specifically with a kitchen garden as we're talking about today, is that you can often grow a lot of things that you wouldn't find at the grocery store, and you may not even find at the farmer's market. You can grow all kinds of varieties of things, again, that are appropriate for your area, given your hardiness zone. But you can grow all kinds of wonderful things, and all kinds of heirloom tomatoes that are really rare to find, but delicious to eat and to have in your garden. And then next, this is number, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I don't have number 5, but number 6 is the edible flower garden. And as we talked about, this is just all so popular, to have different types of edible flowers that you can bring into your kitchen and put in salads and, so on and so forth. So that's a lot of fun too, to really delve deep. As I said, these are, you're really going to be diving deep into learning all about the plethora of things that you can grow under these particular headings. And then finally, you know I was going to have to add this to my collection. So that was number 6. I don't have 7 and 8, and this is 9. And this, as I've shared with many of you, my husband is of Asian ancestry. So when I saw this, I just had to snatch it up right away. The Edible Asian Garden. And this is wonderful because it talks, and you see right on the front cover here, it has the picture of bok choy. And these are things that I've really been interested in learning how to grow. And they have information. Rosalind's got some wonderful information here about growing ginger, which I have been experimenting in, my experimental garden. Growing ginger can take a little bit of a while, but if you're patient, you can really be rewarded. And she talks about different types of chilies and snow peas and pea pods and all wonderful things. So if you like creating, Asian recipes, I think that this cookbook will really, or this garden book, they're a combination because she does share a lot of interesting recipes in the second half. Or maybe the last third. Maybe the first 2/3 are primarily about the garden. And then the last third, she's just got all kinds of things, recipes to make, not only culinary, but for teas and different things like that. So this is the series by Rosalind Creasy. I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly, or at least trying. But any book you can find by Rosalind, you're not going to be disappointed. She goes into such detail, and I just love that. The next book I want to share with you is called Recipes from a French Herb Garden, and this is by Geraldine Holt. Now, I've had this book a very long time. Those of you who've been with me for a while, you know that I have been collecting cookbooks and gardening books probably, I'm thinking about this, over 45 years. So I have quite a collection. And this book actually was published back in 1989. And I just think that this is such a sweet book. She starts with going over herbs that are traditionally grown in a French garden. So if this is something that you're thinking about, and that you liked Rosalind's book on various French vegetables to grow in your kitchen garden, you'll really enjoy this because she covers all of these different, what she classifies as French herbs for your garden. So these are the ones that you can look through if you're really trying to do a very authentic potager. You can look through this and decide what you want to add to your kitchen garden. And then after she goes through this list, and it's extensive, and she's covering really not just herbs, but she's got some edible flowers in here. She also covers purslane, which is, it's like portulaca. It's somewhat looks like a little bit of a succulent. It's so pretty, I love it. And it's edible. And I think purslane and portulaca, I think the edible varieties, I think they're actually high in omega-3s, if I remember the non-animal form of omega-3s, which is supposed to be good for our hearts. So she's got a lot of nice things in here that really you would think of as being more outside of just herbs. So it's an extensive list. She's got arugula, she's got sorrel, which I love. I've got some growing in my kitchen garden right now. And she goes through all of this, but just as a short paragraph. So it's good as an introduction to help you look through and say, okay, I want to try this, this, and this, and then you can see if they're appropriate, which for the most part, most herbs are appropriate for your hardiness zone. And then you can supplement this with one of Rosalind's books or Sylvia's books or the Moosewood Kitchen Garden book. Any of those, I think, will make a good supplement to this to help you learn a little more detail about how to best plant these and where to plant them. But what is so wonderful about this, after you go through that list, she lists different recipes that are so charming and so quintessentially, at least to me, I mean, I can't say for sure, but they just strike me as so quintessentially French, and they all sound delicious. And so this is definitely something, and it's very cute because she has all the names of the recipes in French. And then underneath, she has, the English. But she has one here that I think is just so terrific because it's one of those kind of recipes. And that's another thing too, as I mentioned with some of the other cookbooks or some of the other gardening books that are part cookbook. These recipes highlight making the most out of what you're bringing in from your garden and highlighting those flavors, not trying to cover them up, not adding a whole slew of other ingredients that are just going to disguise all the freshness and vibrancy of what you're growing in your kitchen garden. And one of these, and again, not a ton of ingredients, which is always refreshing to see. But the recipe that I'm talking about specifically here, she has, and then she breaks it down into chapters like soups and egg dishes and so on and so forth. And this chapter on eggs and cheese, she has a fresh herb tart that is just all about highlighting the herbs that you grow in your herb garden. Or if you're just doing herbs, this is the book for you with recipes that are just fantastic. Easy to follow, easy to make, authentically, I believe, French, and things that I think you're going to really find highlight what you're growing. She has things in here that I'm telling you, I would have never thought of. And I live in the Texas Hill Country where peaches are king. And there are all kinds of peach recipes that you can find here in the Hill Country because we grow a lot of peaches, they sell a lot of peaches, and there's peach everything. But she has a recipe here where she is making a custard using peach leaves. I had never heard of anything like that. It's just fantastic. And she's got a peach tart with hyssop, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, the herb hyssop. And she's just got some wonderful things. I won't spoil it for you, but she's got recipes using elderflowers and rose petals, and it's just delightful. I highly recommend this. So, Recipes from a French Herb Garden by Geraldine Holt. Now, the next kitchen garden book I want to talk to you about are actually two books. And these two books are by Ellen Ecker Ogden. And if you're familiar with Ellen, she's got a wonderful collection of kitchen garden books. Now, prior to this book, there's a book called Just the Cook's Garden. It may have been written by her and her husband, or just her husband. I can't remember. I don't have it in my collection, but I do have this one. This was written in 2003, and it's called From the Cook's Garden. And I love the subtitle of the book, Recipes for Cooks Who Like to Garden, Gardeners Who Like to Cook, and Everyone Who Wishes They Had a Garden. I think that's very sweet. And I want to mention that the foreword in this book is written by Deborah Madison. And for those of you who are vegetarians, or if you just like her cookbooks, I have a number of her cookbooks. I like her very much. She writes a lot of books, as I said, vegetarian, with wonderful vegetable recipes, and she writes a lovely foreword in this book. I think I've shared with you in the video where I shared with you about homeschooling my son, and we really enjoyed books that we call living books. And to me, all of these books, the reason I really like them and I recommend them to my friends who are, wanting to start a kitchen garden, is because these are all living books. And it's those books that are so much richer than just putting down a bunch of information or putting down a bunch of recipes with no backstory and whatnot. But this is just such a wonderful living book. And the foreword by Deborah Madison is just delightful. And I think that you really like this book. Again, this is just going to be so rich with, and the illustrations are darling, but this is so rich with recipes for what you grow, and then how to really let those flavors shine in whatever you use what you grow to make a meal. Now, this is really a supplement to any of the more detailed gardening books that you would add to your home library for creating a kitchen garden, this is really going to have a lot more to do with recipes for how to use what you grow in your herb garden. I started with an herb garden, and I grow so many herbs. I always tend to go in that direction, but now I'm kind of got full-blown kitchen garden with all kinds of veggies. This really highlights the flavors of what you grow. And I love the fact that as you go through the book, she has different little, like little pop-outs areas that she's kind of highlighted in a different color. And they're often things that are going to help you, especially use up kind of maybe all those bits and bobs of things that may be a little leftover or something like that. And one of her recipes in here is an herbed sea salt. And I have a video where I make herb sea salts with a lot of herbs from my garden. And I'll be sure to link to that in the iCards and in the description below. But her recipe in this book is wonderful as well. So I can't say enough about Ellen Ecker Ogden. I really like her books. But this, I believe, is one of her newer books. Now, I just found this recently, and it's just in a paperback form, and it's saying that this was published in 2011. Now, I don't know if this, is a reprint of an older book. It doesn't say inside, or if it came out as a paperback, or did it come out as a hardback? I don't know, but you can definitely, I'll put the information, in the description below, and you can research it a little. But, as I said, I found this in paperback. And what's great about this is, again, a lot of these are going to be a matter, like I said, if you can find these in your library, take them out, look through them, and decide what you want. Because you don't necessarily need all of these, all of these sort of 10 subsets, because I know I'm talking about 10 books, but in some cases, if there were more than one book, by the same author, I'm kind of counting this as one group. But I wanted to share a variety of books with you because a lot of these can be kind of either or. You can kind of trade these out. I'm kind of the person, as I've shared with you, I love collecting books. I love reading books like this. And I always find a little something, and often sometimes a little something more than what I had in other books. But this is great because she will go through, why you want to have a kitchen garden. We talked about what a kitchen garden is, but why do you want to have a kitchen garden? I mean, it's a wonderful hobby. And there's something about, even if you think, oh, maybe I don't have a green thumb, maybe I'm not a good gardener. It's amazing how over time, year after year, you build on your skills and you get better and better at gardening and you learn more and more. And it's just nice to be out in the fresh air and sunshine, even if sometimes you're just weeding, and especially if you have kids, it's great getting them out in the fresh air and sunshine and helping them to really understand, where our food comes from. And definitely everything we've been through, the last year or so now, learning to be more self-sufficient and learning to be able to grow more of the food that you eat is very important. It's very important on so many levels, not just, national emergencies like what we've gone through now, but, it's like when I talk with, stocking a prepper pantry and why you always want to be prepared in one way or another. Having a kitchen garden is another way of being prepared. You can grow a lot of the food you can eat. I know that my mother, lived through the Great Depression of the 1930s here in the United States. And she often shared with me that, her and her mom and her sisters, really often survived on what they were growing in their garden. And it many times was a lifesaver. My Italian relatives, have shared the same with me who lived through World War II. And so being able to grow fruits, vegetables, herbs, edible flowers, this is very important. Especially with herbs, it's amazing how many home remedies you can make that, aren't going to maybe work exactly overnight, but in the long run can be very helpful to your overall health. And some things do work very quickly, like different salves and poultices and washes, that you make from herbs. So there's just so much to having to a kitchen, so much to have from having a kitchen garden and becoming more self-sufficient, that I highly recommend, even if you just start with a few pots on a kitchen window. It's fantastic, just starting. It's really important. But in any event, she goes through the different types of kitchen gardens, and she talks about the salad lover's garden. And this goes great hand in hand with Rosalind's book, all about the salad garden. And she also covers the cook's garden and the children's garden, which we're going to talk about in more detail in a minute. The culinary herb garden, the pesto or the patio garden. Excuse me, I'm thinking the other one. I was talking, the Italian vegetable garden was talking a lot about pesto. The patio garden, see? Yeah, just a little patio or a balcony. The heirloom maize garden, that's, really getting rather dramatic. The garnish garden, the chef's garden, the family garden, the artist's garden, that's always a pretty one. The country garden, I think that's kind of what I have, a little bit of everything. And the four friends garden, that's cute. But then she has a lot of resources where she talks about designing a kitchen garden, preserving the bounty, a well-stocked pantry. So she just really, as the name implies, the complete kitchen garden. This is the complete kitchen garden. The next book I want to share with you is really going to be a hit with anybody who likes DK publishing. They publish some of, in my humble opinion, the most beautiful books. And that's really where I put this book. I would say that yes, this is a plethora of information. It's an encyclopedia, but it's also the most gorgeous coffee table book. And it's called The New Kitchen Garden. And it's by Anna Pavard or Pavard. I'm not 100% sure how to pronounce her name. But the subtitle is A Complete Practical Guide to Designing, Planting, and Cultivating a Decorative and Productive Garden. And boy, is that the truth. This book is just amazing. Now, this book came out in the it was published here in the United States in the mid-1990s. But I believe it was probably available a good while maybe before that in England. But what's so amazing about this book, and if you are familiar with DK books, the pictures are just fantastic. And they're not just any old picture. There are some beautiful garden pictures and all of this. But when Anna goes into detail about all of the different varieties of fruits and vegetables, herbs, and edible flowers that you can grow in your kitchen garden. She has pictures of everything, and they're nice, good, large-size pictures. And then she puts the name of whatever it is along with the variety. So I don't know if you can see that, but it's just so detailed. Plus, she also goes into great detail about the whole planting process, whether you're starting seeds inside or you're starting seeds out in the garden, and who and why and when, you should do these different things. And she also has a chapter on if you're not going to use your vegetables right away, or your fruits or herbs or edible flowers, how to store things for the long haul. And I think that's well worth it. That's just such valuable information. But something that I think that people are going to find, that you're going to find this very interesting, is that in the beginning, she has a lot of different ideas on designing different gardens. Now, where Ellen focused on cute things, like the salad garden or the chef's garden, and to a certain extent, Anna has a little bit of that. But something that I think is very interesting is that she provides a lot of different ideas for kitchen garden, specifically kitchen garden design, depending on what you're working with. She also covers kitchen design for very small areas, right down to an edible window garden. Basically, it's just a window box outside your garden, or it could be inside on a sunny windowsill. But something that's very cute, she calls this particular design the city larder. And basically, she is working with something that is no bigger than probably a balcony off an apartment in a big city. And she shows what you can grow on even on a little small balcony, which I think is wonderful and very inspiring if you live in the city, but you really, get a hankering for wanting to have a kitchen garden. She's just got some wonderful ideas and, wonderful actual photographs, as well as some wonderful, delightful drawings. And then the other one that she has that I think is very interesting is something that she calls the Californian courtyard. And she basically shows, if you're just working with a courtyard, what you can grow there. And so it's a little more expansive, say, than the city larder, the city balcony garden, but that gives a lot of interesting ideas. So I think she's filled with a lot of lovely, the book is filled with a lot of lovely designs based on what type of space you have and what you're thinking of growing. She shows she has a whole section in the back, but she shows a picture here of doing, is it espalier? I'm not quite sure the pronunciation, where you get your fruit trees to maybe grow, along some fencing or a wall, and they just sort of splay out like that. It's so pretty. And I think that's very French potager. So I think that's delightful. But I think this is something that you're going to really love. But one of the things that this is where she's talking about harvesting and storing excellent information. But something that I think is so helpful in this book is that she takes pictures of actual gardens with these fruits, vegetable, herbs, and edible flowers growing. So you can see how this all looks when everything is full grown and growing together. So I think that it's these type of photographs that can be very helpful to you, for you to visualize, oh, okay, this is what this is going to look like, when everything is filled in. And do I like that appearance? So she's got the pictures with the hand drawings showing, where to plant this, that, and the other thing. And, the way of drawing, it always looks so, everything's perfect and the right height and whatnot. But then she has the pictures of what the garden looks like once you've put all these things in and they've grown. So that's really, I find that's very useful. And as I said, it's just, the cover is pretty, the book is pretty, and I have to tell you a little story that when I was a homeschool mom, I had this on my coffee table in my living room. And we had, as I've shared in my homeschooling video, we had little, like what we called them co-ops. I think moms call them pods today. But we had a co-op that took place in my kitchen here. And sometimes the moms would, and our home it's very old and we don't have an open floor plan or anything. So everything is very separated. And sometimes some of the moms, because it might have been a little bit of a drive for them, would just spend the morning with me, which was really just wonderful to have the companionship. And I remember my one friend, the first time she saw this on my kitchen table, on my coffee table in the living room, and she picked it up and she opened it up and she was like, oh my God, this book is gorgeous. And we both were sitting together on the couch looking through it and oohing and eyeing about our dreams, for what we would want our kitchen gardens to look like someday. So this is a wonderful book, and it can be a terrific conversation starter once we can get back to entertaining and having people over. This is wonderful. And something that I have seen this a lot at Half Price Books and other used bookstores, because it's been out for a while, and often you do see a lot of DK books, which I don't know why, if they're maybe overprinting or whatever they call it, because boy, if you have a DK book, it's a treasure. Never give it away. Now, the next kitchen garden book that I want to share with you, again, is actually two books. They're both by Jennifer R. Bartley, And this first one is Designing the New Kitchen Garden, an American Potager Handbook. This is really when you feel that maybe you're going to go all in and you're going to do a pretty significant potager. Or either you're going to start out that way, or maybe you're redesigning what you have. And that's really what drew me to this book. There were no recipes in this book. This is just serious garden design, or kitchen garden design. And what drew me to this was, I really was giving a lot of thought last year about, kind of redoing what I had, where, I was mostly growing herbs, and I really wanted to move into doing something that had raised beds and was, because our soil here can be a little rocky, that had raised beds and was going to focus more on bringing in some vegetables and more edible flowers, and eventually I look forward to bringing in some fruits. But when I started flipping through this book, when I came across it a while ago, I thought, oh my goodness, this is just such serious garden design. And I just was looking through it, and what I loved was that she had a lot of options, like some of the other books as well, but she goes into a lot more, serious detail, as to exactly how to design a garden, no matter where you live and given what space you're working with. And she's very serious about it. She labels everything, and this is, something that I want to show you. Now, this is an extensive garden, but she goes into a lot of detail with her drawings, and then she labels everything, and she talks about what's for shade, what's for sun, which that was very attractive to me, because I have to grow a lot of stuff in shade, because most things just simply can't take our hot summer Texas sun. But then what she does is, because she's so detailed, rather than just having like lines where she's saying, oh, this is X or Y or whatever the case may be, she labels everything with letters. And then you go into the pages that follow that picture, and she goes into detail about specifically what she's recommending and to grow where and what varieties, and so on and so forth. So this is really, as you see, she'll have it listed like this, very detailed, very detailed lists that with letters that coordinate to, all of the letters in her pictures, with very detailed varieties. I mean, you can copy this exactly, if you wanted, because she gives you everything you need. She talks about building trellis and building raised beds and the detail that goes into that. And then she also has information in the back on getting plants started inside by seed, if you live in a climate where you need to do that, and then kind of hardening them over, before bringing them out little by little, and then eventually getting them into your garden. She goes into a lot of detail about that. She talks about, composting bins and composting. And so this is when you're just going in with both feet, and you're like, okay, I'm designing a kitchen garden, and Jennifer's going to walk you through step by step. And both of these books I found used, so I just want to give you a heads up on that. The other book, I've actually had this one before I had this one, so I knew about Jennifer, and I knew she had this Designing the New Kitchen Garden book that she had come out with. So I was kind of really keeping my eyes open for it and looking for it whenever my husband and I would be tooling around, at the used bookstores. But this one is called The Kitchen Gardener's Handbook. And then this, again, like some of the others I've talked about, this can be like an either or. This can, you can have this instead of Sylvia's books, or instead of like the Moosewood book. It's really going to be a matter of, if you see these books at the bookstore and you can flip through them and you get a feel for, okay, I like this one, not so much that one, or whatever the case may be, or you get them from the library and you start to look them, oh, I like this writer's style of writing and things like that, although I think these are all great. But if you have to narrow it down, this one has design plans, seasonal checklists, which this is something that I find very interesting in this particular book, is depending on how you can grow, she does cover those like fall and winter gardens as well. So it's not just about spring and summer. For those of you who live like myself, where we can pretty much grow all year long, that's an option. And then she's got the seasonal checklist. She's got lots of recipes in here. She calls them plant profiles. She goes over all the different plants that you can grow in a kitchen garden, plus the growing tips, which is always very helpful. And then she also has, which I think is very much in the French style, having flowers that you can grow in your kitchen garden as well, to really adorn your kitchen table or your dining room table for meals. And so, like as I said, she's got design for winter, and very similar to designing the new kitchen garden, she kind of does the same thing, where she just kind of lists out everything, so you know exactly what you need to plant if you want to copy that plan exactly. So this is something to keep your eyes open for. And, again, compare this with Sylvia's books and the Moosewood book. And I think Rosalind's books, with that whole series of books, 1, 2, 3, they kind of really are unique and kind of just fit the bill for someone who's really looking for sort of that deep dive, very specific discussion. But Jennifer's Kitchen Garden Handbook, Sylvia's Kitchen Garden books and Kitchen Garden Cookbook, the Moosewood Cookbook, I think all of these, really can be kind of an either or, if you want to limit those books that you are bringing into your home garden library. And it's really going to boil down to how you like the layout. This one is especially nice if you really like, something that I really like is that she goes by the seasons. That's really important to me. And so I really like this book. But in any event, so Jennifer Bartley, look for her books, The Kitchen Gardener's Handbook, and if you're really ready to go all in, designing the new kitchen garden, this is everything you need. Now, my next favorite kitchen garden book is actually 2 books. I know, no surprise there. Again, they're by the same author, and that's why I grouped them together. Now, this one is just really such a classic book. This book has been around forever. I seem to have had it forever, and it is called Potager. And it says Fresh Garden Cooking in the French Style. And this is by Georgianne, I think that's how she pronounces her first name, Georgianne Brennan. And she's also the author of this along with Ethel Brennan. This is such a gorgeous book. And the recipes in here are nothing short of fantastic. Not unlike the French Kitchen Garden Cookbook. They're really very quintessentially French. I actually think Georgianne, maybe she lived in France for a while, I'm not sure. I believe she lives in California. But the recipes and the pictures, and like so many things that are French recipes, there's not a lot of ingredients, and the focus is on what you're bringing in from your French garden or your French kitchen garden, if you're growing a lot of very French things. And it's just beautiful. Simple sandwiches on baguettes, using the lettuce and the radishes from your garden, making beautiful raviolis, homemade raviolis with, I know that seems Italian, but stuffing them with all the beautiful French vegetables that you may be growing in your garden. Just one, she's got a sandwich on with herbed vegetables, just these lovely, lovely, simple meals. She's got a flatbread here with some beautiful sliced tomatoes and some cured olives. And again, seasonal. I love that. You're just going to really be, eating. You're going to be growing, harvesting, and eating along with the seasons. And again, a lovely introduction, you know, all about the living books. But something that I wanted to share with you, and this is also very near and dear to my heart, this is a gift from my husband for our anniversary, and it was the first year we were married, our first year anniversary. So that was very sweet. I love the inscription. But in any event, I think that if you're looking for something where, again, you're wanting creative ways to use what you have grown in your garden, and this, again, this is going to be primarily recipes. So, you know, this could be an either or. If you have to make a decision, or what you find in your travels between Potager by Georgianne Brennan or the French Kitchen Garden Cookbook, I may lean to this one. This one is just very special to me. I think maybe because my husband gave it to me as a gift. The foreword in this book is written by Alice Waters, because I really think this book speaks to Alice Waters' heart. Because those of you who are familiar with Alice Waters, she really started that sort of farm-to-table cooking in California with her restaurant there. And so she's very much, you know, bringing it in from the garden, using a minimum amount of ingredients, just to really let what you're bringing in from your garden shine. And that's how Georgianne cooks with her recipes. The recipes just are an explosion of flavors in your mouth, and you can't go wrong. This I highly recommend for using as a reference for how to best use what you grow in your kitchen garden. Just wonderful. Now, speaking of children's gardens, Georgianne, along with Ethel Brennan, wrote The Children's Kitchen Garden, a book of gardening, cooking, and learning. And this is so sweet. And this book gave me so many ideas, and something, I have to read something to you. This book was published in 1997. And when my son was a little boy, he really loved helping out in the garden. And, you know, as I shared earlier, we would grow little things like patty pan squash and cornichons, you know, the little gherkins, all the little things, interesting fruits and vegetables that kids find fascinating. Well, he, you know, must have been like perusing around things, you know, maybe in the bookstore with my husband. He must have been real little. And he didn't know how to write yet. But he dictated something that my husband wrote in this book. And he wrote, "Mommy, you're the best mommy in the whole wide world. Love, your son, Ben." So just too cute. It brings tears to my eyes. But you can get, if you have children or grandchildren or nieces and nephews, or you take care of children and you really want to get them out in the garden, and you want to get them cooking, and you want to get them gardening, and then you know, watching the things grow and harvesting them and bringing them into the kitchen and then making a meal, which they'll want to eat because they helped grow it and cook it. And I believe that Georgianne and Ethel Brennan started a children's kitchen garden at a school in California where they live. So these things are kind of been tried and tested, so to speak. But they're very easy. They're very easy to work your way through. They list all the different herbs that are appropriate, you know, to be growing with kids, that kids might enjoy because they're really wonderful aromas, or they're pretty to look at. And I got to tell you a little short story about dill. My son and I grew dill, and the nice thing about dill is there's a beautiful kind of yellow floral burst of a flower, and it attracts the caterpillars that then go on to become butterflies. And my son saw the caterpillar on the flower, and on the yellow flower, and he was so worried. You know, he was real little, and he was like, "Oh, Mama, you know, some kind of worm is eating our flower, our dill." And I said, "Oh, don't worry." And what's so cute is I didn't even remember this. My son, who's a grown man now, shared the story with me back over this past summer when he was building the raised beds for me in my garden when he was home during the quarantine time. And I'm telling it to you as he told it to me, and I said to him, "Oh, honey, don't worry, those are caterpillars and they're going to turn into beautiful butterflies." But he was still concerned, and he said, "But Mama, they're going to eat all our dill." And I said, "Oh, that's okay. We grew a lot, so it'd be enough for everybody." And that, I'm telling you, was such, it's sometimes interesting that you don't realize when you say something as a parent or a grandparent or an aunt or an uncle, or even a babysitter, what a profound effect it has on the child. And my son always remembered that when you grow a garden, don't worry so much, if you see caterpillars or whatever the case may be. We read another book called Rabbit Hill, which is about the little animals, and they come to the garden and they eat some things. And the lady has a statue of St. Francis, and the lady is watching off in the distance, and the animals are going in the garden and eating. And it's like a garden she grew for them, so they would have something to eat. And it's very cute because I think the mole can't see, and he's with another little friend, a little animal who can see, and the little animal who can see kind of gasps, and the mole's like, "What is it? What is it?" Squirrel or whomever he's with, and the other animal says, "It's our saint. It's our saint. She put a statue of our saint." And I just think that's so adorable because it's St. Francis, the patron saint of animals. And that's something that my son always remembered from reading that book. But that they're to be generous, and to not worry if the caterpillar or the little animals may sneak in and eat a little something. You grow plenty. There's enough for everybody. And I liked that kind of little lesson of generosity that he learned. So in any event, there's a lot of wonderful ideas for what to grow, how to grow it, creating, whether you're doing it in containers or in an actual garden in the backyard. Again, if you just have a little small space, she's got wonderful ideas for that. And then she just has cute little recipes, that kids will love, like mint lemonade and, using nasturtiums. I think there's something about eating edible flowers that kids love. And again, they're very seasonal things. She has radish recipes in here, and I have to tell you, you can do the most simplest things. There's something fun, I think, about having kids grow radishes. Carrots too, but radishes are very easy to grow because they're small. And my son would love, we'd grow some radishes and pull them out of the ground. And we'd often grow the French radishes, to have a little mild flavor. And we'd prepare them, in the French way with some butter. And so, she has radishes where she also shows you how to take some parsley from your garden and make a little dip. And so there's just a lot of things here that are fun and easy to make. She's got a fall garden soup as you're winding down your garden. And maybe depending on where you live, if you're planning on doing a fall garden, great, or kind of a winter garden that you start planting in the late summer, early fall. And so she's kind of got a fall garden. She's got a fall garden soup here. We're kind of using up the last of your summer vegetables. And so just cute things, and if you grow pumpkins, she has it where you hollow out the pumpkin, the little pie pumpkins, pumpkin pie pumpkins, and you hollow them out and you make a little soup that you serve in there. So just a lot of cute things, very easy jams, like a very easy strawberry jam. So this is just just a wonderful book, if that's something that interests you, by Georgianne and Ethel Brennan, The Children's Kitchen Garden, or of course, for fabulous recipes, The Potager by Georgianne Brennan. Now, the next set of books that again, same author, but I'm counting as one. But it kind of goes along with this theme, so I didn't want to leave this out. For those of you who are really interested in doing a children's kitchen garden, and it can, it doesn't have to be the whole kitchen garden, and it can just be an area of your kitchen garden that you dedicate, for your children to really cultivate and have some fun. You can do, these books talk about building little teepees that then the beans grow up on. I mean, so many wonderful ideas. And all of these books are by Sharon Lovejoy. And this one is called Roots, Shoots, Buckets, and Boots. I think this is a very popular book and it's been around a while. And it's called Activities to Do in the Garden, Root, Shoots, Bucket, and Boots. And then this one, which I just think is absolutely adorable. This one's an old one. As you can see, I've had this a long time and it's spent a lot of time outside. It's very faded. And this is called Sunflower Houses, Garden Discoveries for Children of all ages. And I will definitely say that when you garden with kids, the discoveries that you yourself personally have can be rather amazing. And then the next one she has, also by Sharon Lovejoy, is Hollyhock Days, Garden Adventures for the Young at Heart. And it really, I mean, all of these, they're all the same in the sense that, you know, they're really geared to sort of those fun garden projects. And this one has some lovely little verses that are, you know, she'll include like maybe a little quote or a little verse from a poem that are fun, you know, to read to kids. And again, lots of projects. If you like gardening, you know, with kids and you're thinking, okay, what can I do? You know, you want to build one of the little teepees where everything grows up on it. That can be so much fun. But, you know, I think all of these are nice, and I've collected them. Again, all of these I purchased used, and I've had these a very long time now. But you can, if you're looking for one, if you just wanted to pick one out of these, I really like Root, Shoots, Bucket, and Boots, because this is just filled with lots of activities to make, you know, all kinds of things that I think that kids, here's like the plan for the teepee over here. So many things that you can do in the garden. And, you know, I think that this is real, and the pictures are just delightful. It's like a children's storybook in many ways. And she also shares some fun things that, you know, kids like to do that maybe to us seem like things that have been around for a really long time, but can almost seem very magical to kids, like showing them how to make sun tea with herbs that you harvest from your garden. And this is funny, because we always did this. When my son saw this, when I was reading this to him, and I mentioned radish sandwiches, oh, we were going to grow radishes and we were going to have radish sandwiches. And she's got a lot of tips in here for making, you know, like very natural little things for helping you keep your garden looking nice, keeping the bad pests away, but nothing that's going to upset the good visitors like the bees. We would always, I remember the first time my son saw some bees, we grew a lot of something called bee balm, which is kind of an herb that has a beautiful, it almost looks like a firework, starburst type flower. And there were a lot of bees around it, and he was like a little scared. I said, oh, don't worry. They're just the workers, you know, and they're collecting the pollen, and they're going to bring it back to the hive. They're not going to sting you, you know. I really tried to encourage him not to be afraid in the garden, and to, you know, obviously be careful, especially when you're working with garden tools and whatnot. And you do see certain, you know, we've got some, you know, pretty interesting bugs that you need to be careful of. But, you know, with the bees, you know, I always wanted to encourage bees in the garden. And so I would say, oh, they're working, they're going about their business, and don't worry too much. We're going to garden, we're going to let them do their job, and everybody's going to be happy. So, but in any event, so Root, Shoots, Bucket, and Boots, I just like saying it. It's such a cute title, by Sharon Lovejoy. Can't say enough about this. Now, no list of kitchen garden books would be complete without me sharing this book with you, and specifically this author. Now, the book I have is called The Backyard Problem Solver, and this is by Jerry Baker. Jerry Baker has a host of books, so if you garden, you've probably come across some of his books. But what I love about Jerry Baker is that he gives you all the various home remedies you need to treat any kind of problem in your kitchen garden and beyond. So you never have to use pesticides, and you never even have to spend the money, which can be pretty good money, on those organic treatments for your garden. His home remedies work great. I had a little problem with powdery mildew. I looked it up in here. He laid out the recipe, and yes, they're exactly recipes, because you're going to be using things in your kitchen, maybe from your bathroom or your medicine cabinet. The recipe called for a little instant tea, a little baby shampoo, and a little hydrogen peroxide. Mix it up in a spray bottle with water, shake it up real good, spray it on my plants. It was rosemary that had developed a little bit of the powdery mildew. It was gone within a few days. So you're going to go all natural home remedies for your plants in your garden, in your kitchen garden, and you're also going to save money, because you're not going to have to spend anything on even the natural versions of cures at the various local garden stores. Now, if you would like to learn more about creating a kitchen garden and what to grow in your kitchen garden, as well as have a tour of my kitchen garden, be sure to click on this video over here, where I have a playlist that covers all of that and more. And I'll see you over there in my Texas Hill Country kitchen garden. Love and God bless.